The other potential tactic is to get rid of the filibuster and make it about 50 Democrats in the Senate plus Kamala Harris as the tie-breaking vote. The third mechanism is reconciliation. Reconciliation can only deal with things that directly implicate the U.S. budget, but that's a lot of things. Here is Bernie Sanders on with Dana Bash on CNN State of the Union. And he makes a very good point that sometimes context makes a difference. And the purpose in which you use certain tools is relevant as to whether it justifies using certain tools. Here is that clip.
Republicans have used the so-called reconciliation process before, like in 2017, to try to kill Obamacare. You accused them of abusing the process back then. You said, quote, the function of reconciliation is to adjust federal spending and revenue, not to enact major changes in policy. But you alluded to this. You are the chairman of the Budget Committee, or going to be. You are already talking about using this tactic for things like paid family and medical leave, for universal pre-K and childcare, for climate change, tuition-free college, eliminating student debt, and the $15 minimum wage. How is that not what you criticize Republicans for doing?
Well, the devil is in the details of what we want to do and when we want to do it and when we have to do it. What we are talking about, by the way, are two separate reconciliation packages. Number one, the emergency one right now.
Right.
Get direct checks, get those checks into people's pockets right now so they can feed their families. And make sure that people are not evicted from their homes. Make sure that states have the funds they need to get vaccines into people's homes. That's what we've got to do right now. And then as soon as that is done, we have to rebuild this economy. Unemployment is much, much too high. Wages are much, much too low. There are structural problems that we have ignored for years. Climate change is a reality.
And you're okay doing all of that through this process that you criticize Republicans for using? These are major policy changes.
These are major policy changes, but the devil is in the details. And I criticize Republicans, for using reconciliation to give tax breaks to billionaires, to create a situation where large profitable corporations now pay zero in federal income taxes. Yes, I did criticize them for that. And if they want to criticize me for helping to feed children who are hungry or senior citizens in this country who are isolated and alone and don't have enough food, they can criticize me. I think it's the appropriate step forward.
Well, the devil isn't even in the details. The devil is in
the top line, the top line of all of it.
Right.
It's really what he's saying is just the context. It's that reconciliation. I mean, I could even go deeper into the fact of the matter is that the 50 senators, in the event that they go through reconciliation, the 50 senators who vote on this reconciliation bill would represent far more people than were at 50 Republican
people.
Yes. I mean, aside from that, I mean, because presumably, right, the reconciliation it's rather undemocratic to use it to pass measures that benefit a very small segment of the population. That's really the issue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I understand the role of asking that kind of question, but I mean, I even think Dana Bash knows that it is false in its outset. I mean, like, there's not a way to conflate in good faith using reconciliation to give massive tax breaks and using reconciliation to provide relief for people in a time of massive crisis. I mean, Bernie Sanders' position on the filibuster, I don't know if it's changed, but he's still consistent here. I don't think he seems like he still is on board with filibuster reform, but not abolishing it altogether. I don't agree with him on that. But to say that there's inconsistency in his position here, I just think it's false.
Well,
framing.
The fascinating thing is that whenever Sanders, I shouldn't say whenever, but very often, you see Sanders critiques on these process things or on his approach, never a direct frontal investigation of what he's fighting for.
Exactly.
Because It would sound ludicrous to the American public if Dana Bash or any commentator on the news went at him and actually said, well, wait a second, the merits of daycare. Why would we want that? Or $15 minimum wage when we know that if we'd been keeping up with productivity, the wage would be at somewhere around $23, $24. Or the whole litany of things that he was discussing. Like, you could do that. You could interrogate the relative merit of that in the same way that you would interrogate the relative merit of, should we really have tax cuts for billionaires? Should we really zero out corporate taxes?
It's a procedural critique as opposed to a policy critique, which they very rarely engage with him on. It's always, let's see if we can call you out as a procedural hypocrite, because the moral stance that he is on is just like indisputable. In terms of it's really fundamentally a question of how you define what benefit to society is. Yeah. And again, it's just the fetishization of compromise and bipartisanship for compromise and bipartisanship's sake in the media. That's what frustrates me so much. But that's what's latent in her question to him.
All right, we're going to take a break here. When we come back, we'll be talking to Astra Taylor and Elizabeth Alvarez on the Biden Jubilee 100 campaign. We'll be right back in just a moment.